Morning everybody, KingofNewAnglia here, and this is sort of a response to my earlier video about his entertainment special, King of the Railway, and also a response to Domo Daly's video. Of course, this morning he gave me a video. He put it as a video response to mine, and he brought up there are a few things that I'd like to update about that video, so I thought I'd do this today. Firstly, he talked about he put his views about the Earls of Sodor being exactly like mine, that there are no Earls of Sodor, there are only the Dukes of Sodor. As it turns out, that's wrong. I'm getting my information from The Real Lives of Thomas the Tank Engine, which is a website that was set up in 2002 to talk about the Audrey continuity, the continuity in stories, the history of Sodor that the Reverend Audrey wrote, just to flesh out his, basically to flesh out the world of Sodor. And there's an entire page dedicated to the history. There's at the end of the point of the so-called Regency. Not the British Regency, that is. The Regency, the Sudrian Regency, as it may be called, from 1269 to 1404. It says here that this is during Henry the Fourth. Somebody named Sir Arnold. There was this. Anyway, Sir Arnold de Normanby. Sir Ronald de Normanby. Yeah, Sir de Normanby. Sir Arnold surrendered the island and his regency. Henry showed wisdom and recommitted its governance, therefore officially. Some Sudrians were a little reluctant to accept this new order, but Henry created Sir Arnold, Earl of Sodor. So basically, the Earls of Sodor are the proper title, according to the Audrey continuity. Now, the confusion was that they never talked about the railways. The television series never talked about the Earls before. They only mentioned the Dukes of Sodor because of the character Duke. Well, here's the reason. The Earls of Sodor are active on the Council of the Duchy of Lancaster, and as there's no Duke of Lancaster, the Earl is referred to as Duke by the Sudrians. So basically, the Dukes of Sodor, it's just a nickname. Straight and simple, it's just a nickname. So that's where I got my confusion. I'm sorry about that mistake in the earlier video, but I didn't know about the Normanbys before that. The first time I ever heard of it was in that trailer. Speaking of which, you know, in the first video I mentioned how they introduced the characters of Millie and Stephen. My thoughts on Millie was that she didn't seem to have any real defining thing. She's just an engine. Stephen, on the other hand, has some great potential because he's one of the oldest engines he's one of the oldest engines alive. I mean, he's part of the same class that that Stephenson's rocket was built on. Now, hopefully he's not gonna be Stephenson's rocket, because that would just be ridiculous. If it was of the same class, then yes, because there was more than one engine of the rocket's class. The Northumbrian was one of them, and that had a proper smoke box. So does Stephen. Because the Stephensons, when they kept on updating the classes as they went along. Instead of the rocket having no smoke box, just that long curve up the chimney, they Northumbrian, which was I think the next in the class, had a proper smoke box, which then translated to the planets and the patentees. But anyway, I'm going across. I saw the second trailer, the American trailer, and I saw the characters of Connor and Caitlin. Ugh. Where do I begin? Now, firstly, while I commend Hit Entertainment for introducing international characters to the series, here's the thing. The Reverend Audrey wrote the stories and based the characters on British railway operations and British railway design because he was British and his history of railways linked to British railways. Not to mention, the setting of the island, the closest island to get locomotives is the UK, is Great Britain. It's the Isle of Great Britain. So, and before you think, oh, what about Hero? He's Japanese. Well, well, the thing is, Hero has a personality, and a very good one. That's the reason why he became such a success. He has a very distinct personality. He's the wise old sage, a lot like Edward. He's the wise old sage. We do need a lot of wise old sages, but Hero took off because he was a distinct personality. Now when it comes to Connor and Caitlin, I think they've got the personality of plain white bread with the crusts cut off. Just bland, featureless, and basically nothing. Basically, they've got nothing. Now, I'm not sure. Time may tell. The special hasn't come out yet, but we'll see. And going back on Hero, didn't he go? Why is he still on Sodor? At the end of Hero of the Rails, he went back to Japan. But then in the next season after, it said he came back. Would have only had something like about 2 weeks in Japan before he came back. For someone who misses his homeland for so long, he doesn't really like to stay there, does he? Well, maybe he saw the changes in Japan. Also, here's my thoughts on the character. It's another continuity. His backstory is rather historically inaccurate. The oldest engine on Sodor would be Duke because, well, let me explain. The oldest standard gauge engine on Sodor would be Edward. Thomas is not that far away. Hero is in fact one of the youngest because his class was built in the 1930s. So he wouldn't have come to the island until at least the 1940s, or at least after the end of the war. And by that time, if I'm going by the Audrey continuity, which really I shouldn't because Hit Entertainment continuity doesn't exist, Hero, the Sodor Railway, or as it's called in the Reverend continuity, the Northwest Railway, was already up and running. Gordon, Henry, Thomas, Edward, Gordon, Henry, James would have been here. I'm not sure about Percy and Toby, I'm not sure. But, anyway, by that point, the first five engines would have been here on the island, would have been working on the railway. So they would have known about Hero. But everyone has to be stupid for the plot to proceed in Hit Entertainment stories. But, anyway. This is getting close to 10 minutes, so I'll stop here. Basically, my updates and rethoughts on King of the Railway. So, basically, this is KingofNewAnglia, signing out.